Let's do this way. I guess we just went a little out of line. I guess there was a suggestion. Let them do the presentation. Let them finish it, and then we have plenty of time to ask as many questions as we want. Right? Let them do the presentation, all three, so presentation can be finished. Please follow that. That will be ideal instead of putting question in between the question of others. And everybody should have its own question instead of asking question in between the question was previous person is asking. Thank you.
Thank you again. So I will be. So before I start, how many folks here know that the Attorney General's office has a bias crimes unit or investigates bias? Anyone? Just a few. So the AG has a bias crime unit. That's all we do: investigate bias hate, bias incidents, and bias crimes, and we follow up on every leads. And we'll go over a lot today. So as soon as the PowerPoint is up on the screen, um, not coming. Oh. Mhm. Yes, we have a website, at the AG's office, NJ Buys. We have a web page, and then we have an online portal where you can go online and file a complaint. Hey, and you can remain anonymous. And I brought some flyers, but that's the end. But yes, we have a web, we have a 24/7 hotline you can call, and we have an online portal, which we'll get to if this comes up. But so the AG, yes, correct. Correct. But if that person comes back and does it again, that's a harassment. So then you can charge. If you get to find the person through cameras, through whatever. Some are caught, some are not. Some come back, some don't. Some escalate from hate speech to murder to assault. So we've seen everything. Um, Not coming up. Okay. Yeah. All right. So okay. So this is Tisha Leonardo Santiago. She will talk about you know the, I will go after. Hopefully, we'll have the PowerPoint ready.
Okay, so while they get it figured out, you're all gonna have to deal with me. My name is T. Leonardo Santiago. I'm gonna use the mic because I'm very soft spoken. Otherwise, you're not gonna hear a thing. Yes, perfect. I am with the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights. How many of you have heard about New Jersey Division on Civil Rights? Okay, there will be a pop quiz at the end. So, the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights, we have been around since 1945. That's 19 years before federal civil rights statutes. Now, the law against discrimination, well, before we get into the law against discrimination, Division on Civil Rights, we enforce three laws: the law against discrimination, which I'll get into, the New Jersey Family Leave Act since 1980, 88, 89. I like facts, y'all. So, this law is important because what it says is that if you need to take leave to take care of a loved one, so if you or your spouse recently had a child, recently adopted, um, recently took a child in through foster, right? You're taking care of a loved one, um, not necessarily yourself. And since COVID, we expanded that definition to include your fiance or someone that's like family. So, for example, at work, I have a work mom. She has been my work mom since the day that I walked into that office. Everybody knows T is Wally's work daughter. So, God forbid I'm T. But God forbid that Wally got sick, I could go to the agency and say, hey, I need to take time off, I need to take FLA to take care of Wally because she's like family to me. We've established that relationship. Now, you are applicable. Yes. Y'all can figure that out. I could keep going. Y'all know I know this by memory. So with the FLA, what essentially I've done this for years, y'all. We always have to save the men. We always have to save the men. Only this side of the room got it. It's okay. So FLA is applicable if you worked 1,000 base hours within that last 12 months, that you qualify for 12 weeks of unprotected leave. And you could take that 12 weeks together, 12 weeks in intervals, or days throughout a 24-month period. And this is separate from the federal medical leave. So if you're working, you know that FLI, money they take out of your paycheck, that's not us, that's Department of Labor. They're the ones that give you the money, we're the ones that give you the job protection. We also enforce the Fair Chance in Housing Act since January of 2022. And what this law says is that if you have a criminal background, a housing provider cannot use your criminal background to determine whether or not you qualify for housing. So they have to, before they do a criminal background, they have to give you a conditional offer. And then they have to tell you, hey, we're going to do a criminal background. And they only have a certain amount of look back period. So if you're cooking meth in subsidized housing, you're not protected. If you are a sex offender, you're not protected. If you were selling weed 20 years ago, right? And since then, you've had gainful employment, you've lived at various places, never had an incident, they can't look at that. Depending on the degree of offense is depending the look back period. And we have a whole landing page dedicated to that because we understand that housing providers and even individuals may not know what's the degree offense, what's the charge. If we didn't major in criminal justice, we're not going to know this information. So we have a whole page dedicated to that. Now to my favorite law, the law against discrimination. So the law against discrimination has 20 protected categories, and y'all are gonna make sure that I remember them all, okay? So we have age that's only applicable to employment, because you know we have housing that could be 55 and over. We have color, creed, national origin, nationality, ancestry, sex, gender, pregnancy and breastfeeding, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, familial status that's only applicable in housing, lawful source of income that's only applicable in housing, liability for military service. So that's if you're active military, you're protected. Atypical hereditary traits, only applicable in employment. Disability, did I say disability, y'all? I don't think I said disability. I did? I didn't? Okay. I feel like I'm missing one. I said sexuality, sexual orientation or gender identity. Um, and I said race and color. Yep. So I think we got all of them. If I didn't, I'll loop back to that. Now, it's covered in employment, housing, and place of public accommodation. Even if the employer has one employee in the state of New Jersey, they must comply with the law against discrimination. In, in housing, except for two family owner occupied dwellings, housing providers, whether it's a condo association, a co-op, a housing authority, have to comply with housing. Whether you're selling or renting, they have to comply with the law against discrimination. Places of public accommodation, anything that's open to the public, except your religious institutions. So we're looking at prisons and jails. We're looking at state agencies like ourselves. We're looking, or local law enforcement, your movie theaters, your hospitals, your medical facilities, all of those places, your public and private schools, not religious schools, public and private K through 12 and higher ed have to comply with the law against discrimination. So what does that mean? I love to give y'all case examples. So back in 2015, there was a Black Muslim woman that got hired by an employer in New Jersey. She starts working at this employer, and the employer starts making comments, sexual comments about her. And she wears a hijab, and he refers to her as being part of ISIS. She reports this behavior to HR. And then in retaliation, they fire her. Because she knew about our agency, she came to our office, she filed a complaint, we did an investigation, we had a finding of probable cause. A finding of probable cause is essentially we've done the investigations, we've collected evidence, and it raises to a level that it triggers a violation of our law. That case went through our version of court, and then if I'm not mistaken, they ended up settling out. And that case was prior to me getting there because I joined the agency in 2017. For housing, when it comes to housing, this is really important, especially when we're thinking about disability. So if you're living in a housing complex, right? And let's say you have a child or family member that has a disability and you need an accommodation. That accommodation may be, I need a ramp installed to be able to get them, up the stairs, or I need a parking spot closer to the door, um, or a religious accommodation, whatever that may be. The housing provider has to engage in an interactive process with you. They can't just say, sorry, I can't accommodate you. They have to comply with the law. So, for example, in Minatola, that's somewhere in New Jersey, y'all, I can't remember the county, um, this individual goes to their housing provider, it's a large complex, says, hey, I need a spot closer to the door because I have a wheelchair, so I need it to be more accessible for me. The housing provider doesn't even take anything into consideration. They're like, nope, I'm not giving you. If I give you a spot, I got to give everybody else a spot. I don't want to be bothered. It's essentially what the housing provider says. So what do? They come to our office, they file a complaint, we do an investigation. The housing provider violated the law. What did the housing provider have to do? They had to give the individual parking spot. They had to have an overhaul of their policies and procedures. They had to pay penalties, and they had to receive training from our agency. So in the future, they know we can't do this. Place of public accommodation. Um, how many of us know someone that is deaf and or hard of hearing? Deaf and or hard of hearing. So you know the difficulties they may have in navigating day-to-day life, right? Um, so this particular individual is deaf and hard of hearing. They go to a mental health service provider. Now, I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hands, but if you have someone in your life that is dealing with mental health, you may know the difference when they are receiving therapy and are on medication versus when they're not. So imagine your loved one going to healthcare provider, has a hearing loss, asks for interpreter, and for 6 months, the healthcare provider does not provide an interpretation service to your loved one. And this is what happened in this case. They came to our office, they filed a complaint, we did an investigation. Guess what happened to that mental health provider? They got training, they got fined, they got an overhaul of their policies, and they had to provide those services to that individual. And this is why it's important to file a complaint. I can tell you of housing specific. We had a housing case. Well, let's backtrack. How many of you know what redlining is? Okay. So redlining is, for those that don't know, is when realtors or housing people in the housing, it could be realtors, it could be the mortgage company, anyone involved in the securing of the property, will discourage certain groups of people from moving into a neighborhood. So let's say our community right now, let's say this block, right, is primarily Pakistani. So let's say that we had a realtor that was discouraging Latinos from moving onto the block or into the neighborhood. They're like, no, 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 you don't want to live there. You want to go live in Inglewood. Let me go show you a prop. You don't want to live here, right? So because, and I identify as Latina, so because I'm Latina, they're discouraging me from living in this area and buying property in this area. Thank you. They are moving me to another area. So essentially, that's what redlining is. We did a 4-year investigation with 2 sister states, and we found a mortgage company had been engaging in redlining in South Jersey. That ended up being a $20 million settlement. Now, our Black and Brown families have historically not had generational wealth, have not had access to housing because of the way the laws in this country were built, right? So for our Black and Brown families in South Jersey, this created opportunity to create generational wealth. Why? Because with this $20 million settlement between the 3 states, the housing provider, the mortgage company, had to set up resource hubs in those communities that they previously did not have institutions. They had to create mortgage lines, right? They had to create resources and educations for the communities that they had historically been denying access to. So this is small ways that our office has an impact on everyday life. Hair discrimination. 2018, there was a young man, young black man that had his locks cut on the mat. He was at a match in South Jersey. The ref told him he had to cut his locks because he was not in compliance. And this was in 2018. Imagine your child is playing a sport that they love and someone tells them, you can't play because your hair is not in compliance. Our office looked into it. We pushed for an amendment of our law, which adopted the Crown Act, which gives protection. So now your hair is tied to your race, right? So while maintaining the hair is not protected. So for like the Black and Brown community, Latino community, we may use bonnets, we may use do-rags, we may use wraps to maintain our hair. That is not protected. Our hijabs are protected under religion. Any religious garment is protected under religion. But when we're talking about our locks, our knots, our braids, our bantus, the list goes on, that is now protected. So when you're in employment, place of public accommodation, you cannot, or housing, you cannot be discriminated against because of your hair, because it is inherently tied to your race. So those are quick recaps of what we do. Um, I think it's important to know, and I've heard this earlier about reporting. We could talk about data. I could talk to you about data all day long because for our Muslim community, there is a severe underreporting in our Muslim community. The state of New Jersey has been tracking bias incidents since 1994. You could go on the state police website or you can Google bias reports, state of New Jersey State Police, and it will take you to their landing site. And you could go back to 1994 and look at the data. In the last 5 years, and I might be stealing some of your thunder, I apologize. It's okay. You could go into the numbers. I don't. Our numbers went from 2019, it was 944. I leave it to Sam to give you the full breakdown. We're gonna give that's Sam's responsibility for the day. As of 2023, we were at like 2,600. This year, we're gonna break 3,000. So we can say, oh, more people are reporting or there's more bias going on. We don't know. What we do know from our agency perspective is that we've been going out to community to educate community on how to report and why it's important to report. So, for example, with your incident, sir, your sign was stolen. You reported it. You feel like it went nowhere. Your sign was stolen and there was an outcome to it. So, hypothetically, let's say that both signs were stolen by the same person. And if both are reported, and we're going to talk about how to report and why it's important to report. On our side, it creates a pattern, right? Because if we know that something's going, if people are not reporting, then we don't know, hey, we have a hot spot. We have an uptick here. And individuals that commit bias or individuals that commit crimes capitalize on communities that do not report. I'll repeat that. They capitalize. They capitalize on our immigrant communities. They capitalize on our minority communities. They capitalize on communities that are, I'm going to keep this in house because I come from a country or I come from a background where we know that when we report to government or we say something about government, me and my whole family disappears in the middle of the night. That's the truth for some of us, right? So there are various ways that you can report. Now, I'll leave it to Sam to report about DCJ. When we're talking about employment, housing, or place of public accommodation, you can report to my office on one of the 20 protected classes. And it could be because of an actual or perceived discrimination. Meaning, I go to apply for housing, and that particular day, I decided to wrap my hair because sometimes I wrap my hair. And the housing provider perceives me to be Egyptian, and I pull Egyptian because my brothers are half Egyptian. So the housing provider decides not to give me housing. Now, it could be they made a comment, or I noticed that they treated me differently than someone that didn't have a head wrap that particular day on. Or it could be I looked around the neighborhood and I saw that there was like nobody that looked like me type thing, right? There could be, it's not my job to figure it out. All I'm gonna do is go to the agency and say, hey, I applied for housing. This is what happened. Can you see whether or not this is a case you can take? Here's the facts. And then our agency will determine jurisdiction and whether or not we have time to, whether or not we can investigate. So we have a 180-day statute, and that's from the last incident. So let's say that this is an ongoing incident, right? If the first incident happened in 200 days ago, but the last one happened 178 days ago, we can take it as long as it's within our 180-day window. How do you report? Two ways. You could go to bias.njcivilrights.gov, and you're going to get this cool little portal. It's going to have 6 icons. The first 5 on top belong to Division on Civil Rights. You can file for employment, housing, place of public accommodation, New Jersey Family Leave, or the FCHA, the Fair Chance and Housing Act. The 6th icon belongs to bias crimes. We're the state, we like to be special, we know. Now, the difference is when you file a complaint with Division on Civil Rights, we ask you to create a portal account. Why is that? Because your whole case will be on the portal. So any documentations to review, any documents you need to upload, scheduling your intake, all of that is done on the portal. Maybe file with bias crimes is a 2-page form. You could file anonymously, and they will reach out to you. With ours, you have you can file on behalf of yourself. An attorney can file for you. If you're the legal guardian or parent of a child or an individual with disabilities, you can file on behalf of them, or a non-attorney advocate. What does that mean? That if you're not an attorney, you may be a community advocate, you may be a community organization, you may be a community member that's always assisting family or friends, right? You can file on behalf of that person. And what you're doing essentially is that you're helping them through the process. Language access is a big thing. If you reach out to our agency and let us know, like, hey, I have someone that wants to file, but English is not their first language. They have limited English and proficiency. Can you pick the language, whatever language it is that they need? We will find a translator, and we will have that translator available throughout the course of our interaction with the individual to ensure that we have all the facts that we need on their case and that they understand what we're telling them. If we're looking at disability accommodations, right? So we typically do phone calls for our intake interviews. Let's say that you're hard of hearing, you need a video conference, so you could turn on closed caption. We make that available for you. Maybe you need in person because you don't have access to computers. We figure it out with you because we want to get all the facts to determine whether or not we have jurisdiction. I want to be part of the conversation. What's going on back here? Go ahead. Yes. Okay. Okay. Hmm. So I don't make determinations on bias. I left investigations 4 years ago. But okay, but so I'm okay. So I'm not gonna cut. I'm sorry to cut you off. You, as the constituent, do not have to prove a crime or a bias incident. You just have to report it. We're not asking you to be an attorney. We're not asking you to be a legal expert. All we're asking you is to report what's going on. So if you report it, right, internally, they have to assess whether or not it's something that falls within our jurisdiction. If it falls within our jurisdiction legally, right, we have legal scope to be able to investigate, then an investigation can occur. If we don't have legal jurisdiction, unfortunately, there's not much that we can do. But that's why it's important to report, because it may be an instance that you're like, I don't want to report, I don't want to be bothered. But maybe your incident wasn't the one, but your incident created the pattern. Yes. Sorry, we all got in trouble now. All right. So, gotcha. Why? I like hanging out with y'all, but okay. Okay. So, we talked about how to report, right? There's also a phone number. It's 1-833-NJ-DCR for you. So, repeat after me. 1 Come okay guys, we're going to start all over again. All over again. So 1-833-NJ-DCR for you. Okay? So there's 2 things I want you to take away, at least from my presentation today. is you can file a complaint with our office. Let us figure out whether or not we have jurisdiction, and you can call what phone number? All right, we're gonna work on this later, y'all. Y'all failing this quiz right now. And you passed, you passed. Yes, and then bias, BIAS dot njcivilrights.gov is where you could go to file a complaint. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I will be available later post Sam's presentation. I'm actually gonna run home and get some flyers for y'all because I literally live next door. And then I will be right back. Sam, you got this?
Okay. Thank you, Tisha. Santiago. Good job. Can everyone see the screen? You guys want to squeeze in, I guess, ladies? Sisters, you want to move closer, or is that other screen working? Okay. All right. I'll be brief. I'll be quick. So we can. So anyway, let's talk about nature of bias and prejudice. So prejudice can be best defined as a judgment formed beforehand without adequate information. Prejudice typically rests upon unsupported beliefs. Let me repeat that. It's defined as a judgment formed beforehand without adequate information. So I just look at someone and I assume you're this or you're that based on your looks, based on your background, etc. And because prejudice is emotionally charged, it is resistant to change. They're like, this is it. I believe in what I believe, and that's it. I think these people are bad because they're from here. They wear this. They eat that. So, thank you. LT next. So, what is a bias incident? A bias incident is defined in the Attorney General's guidelines as any suspected or confirmed offense or unlawful act which occurs against a person or property, public or private, on the basis of the New Jersey 9 protected classes. I'll break this down because that's a lot, but there's 9 protected classes in New Jersey. So they're race, color, ethnicity, religion, gender, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, and national origin. So it is so an incident is a suspected or confirmed offense or an act. So it could be a racial slur, it could be your whatever, it could be an assault, which becomes a crime, and it could be against a person or a property. Someone defaces a temple, a mosque, something, that's a bias incident against the property, or it could be against a private residence, someone taking your signs off your lawn, etc. Every bias incident reported in New Jersey is reviewed by law enforcement at many levels, including local police, your county prosecutor's office, state police, Homeland Security, and the FBI. These layers of review ensure that the bias incidents are investigated thoroughly and properly. It is important to note that not every bias incident will rise to the level of a criminal offense. For example, certain forms of hate speech in and of itself may be considered to be protected under one First Amendment rights. Other cases may involve a violation of one's civil rights, but may not necessarily mean that criminal law had been violated. Nonetheless, cases involving hate speech should still be reported to your local police. So when in doubt, report it. Let them and let us do the investigation. Just go and report it or make it via phone, etc. Next. So how the system works, once the victim reports a bias incident, the police officer types the report in the EUCR, which we will see next, and he submits it, right? He types it in, he does submit. As soon as it is submitted, that report instantly is sent to the prosecutor's office, Bergen County, which I work with on a weekly basis, and the AG's office, bias crime, which is us. Also, the state police and Homeland Security get the same report. Also, the FBI gets notified and they start vetting those reports for possibility of nexus. So the feds usually have the first right of refusal, the FBI. They get the copy. Let me run this guy. This guy was, I don't know, burning something or spraying some hate words on a mosque here in North Jersey. They find out 6 months ago he was down in Texas doing the same thing. So they can connect the dots because they have a national bigger database. So they get to see it, they run, they'll send it back, we investigate. So the AG's office overlooks all 21 prosecutor's office and 520 police departments. So we are here. The locals uh, report the incident to the county, and the county goes to the AG. So we see everything in the state from north to south. We connect. We've seen stuff that happened north and south. That's a good thing. Um, the other biggest thing is, according to AG's guidelines, every bias incident report has to be filed by police department within 24 hours. So any one of you walks into police or file a complaint, they have 24 hours to report that. And you'll see next. This is our guidelines. You can't sit on it for a month. This guy may come back, hurt, or do something else, or it could escalate. And if the incident is a crime, then they have to call us immediately. It's an automatic phone call to the Attorney General's office. Hey, one of my citizens in this town was stabbed. It was a hate crime. And they still have to do the report, but it's an automatic law enforcement notification call. This is the supplementary bias report. This is the report that the officers fill out when you go and file a complaint. I'm not sure if you can see on the top, left or bottom, but it says all information shall be entered in the UCR system within 24 hours. This is what the officer puts. So make sure you provide as many details as possible to the police officer when filing a bias complaint. The more information they receive from you, the more boxes they can check off in this report. Don't report to the officer that, hey, this guy said some slurs. Say exactly what he said. Report the exact words that were said to you. And they will put them within quotes in the report. If there's a vehicle involved, make sure you report the license plate, because they can run it and find out, and we'll see some examples. And if it happened at a location, give them the location so they can go back out and review cameras, and then try to catch the perpetrator. So give them as much information as possible. Did we jump one? Okay, sorry, go back. So this is what we see. As soon as they hit submit on the previous form, this is what we see. And you see the offender's name, age, 27, female. The victim is a 54-year-old male, has the date, and then the remarks. And it says whatever it says. Road rage incident, could be anything. FU, it said, etc. So I picked a few examples that are anti-Muslim that we receive. We receive a lot, which we'll go over the stats soon. Next. This is another one. June 8th was filed. The offender was 32-year-old male, and the victim was a male. So in this specific one, this brother with his wife and kids pull up to Burger King. They order food. Then they ask for an extra cup and a spoon. So the guy at the window is like, no, I'm not going to give you a cup. Back and forth. The guy on the window calls him a terrorist. So he calls the police. Police show up, and then the person at the Burger King apologizes. So complainant was happy with the apology, didn't file any charges, and off he went. That's another one, also a dispute at an apartment complex between two neighbors, and he calls him a jihadi to harass him. So this one here is another example. This guy walks out of a Dunkin' Donuts, sees a vehicle with a female sitting in the driver's side. There's a Palestinian flag on the back. He loses it, starts screaming, calling her names, threatens to kill her. I will kill you, I will F you, etc. Leaves the parking lot, comes back, does it again. But this time now she has the plate. He leaves again. She calls the police. They track him down and they charge him. Arrested and charged. So let's talk about statistics. Again, we're the AG's office. We see all reports that every county files. So we get everything every day. And then what we do, we put them in stats. We crunch some numbers. Analysts do numbers, and then this way it keeps track of bias and hate crimes throughout the state by monitoring the rise in hate crimes or the lack of reporting. So some towns have high numbers, some have none, some have low. So these are the stats from 2020 to 24. Again, they were rough numbers, approximately. But in 2020, there was 1,452 bias report that happened in New Jersey, filed in 2020. 21, it went up to 1867. 22, it went up almost to 2,000 incidents happening in New Jersey. Last year, it was 2,700 reports. So this year, we're at 1,700 and counting. So we may get up to 3,400. Let's look at the communities that are getting the most hit with bias incidents. The first one is the Black. The Black community, they got 680, almost 700, 876, almost 1,000, 1,100. We're up at 12. The Black community is the highest. Second is the Jewish community. And the third is the LGBTQ. Okay? But look at this, the anti-Muslim number. Let's go next, actually. Do you think that the number of incidents against the Muslim community is an accurate number? Okay, we'll get to that. So 189 incidents against the Muslims compared to 1,000 against the Blacks, 700 against the Jewish. Again, these are approximate numbers. Okay. So according to the World Population Review, New Jersey is fourth. How many Muslims live in Jersey? What's too many? Less than that. It's 321,000, 322,000. So 322,000 Muslims in New Jersey. You think 80 incidents is the real number? No. Okay. That's because there's low reporting or no reporting. We mentioned earlier with Brother Mahmoud, was it? Muhammad, I'm sorry. Politics, wars overseas, police encounters, all have an effect here in New Jersey, whether it's locals, national or international. September 11 attack affected a lot of Arabs, right? And Muslims and everyone actually who looked Arab. Sikhs were assaulted because they wore turbans. They automatically thought they're Muslims, for example, and on and on. COVID drove the bias incident numbers against Asians by twofold, right? Everyone blamed the Asians. Oh, you brought the COVID. They live in Jersey. I mean, they didn't bring anything. They've been here. They were born and raised here. But they got, picked on. Politicians on TV spreading messages that Mexicans are criminals. Guess what happened to the numbers against the Hispanic? Went up again. George Floyd, Ukrainian war, Israeli war, etc., etc. Everything is affecting here the community in New Jersey, whether it's local, as I said, or international. So the anti-Black incidents, 371 in 2019. 2020 is when George Floyd was killed. It jumped, it doubled. Then went up again to 876, 988, 11,000, 1,100, apologize. 660, so like roughly twice. Asians, low, 39, but it doubled again during COVID, 2020 COVID, the numbers doubled up, and still they're low. Doubled again in 2021, and it hovered around the 110, 136 roughly. Anti-Hispanic incidents, same thing. All Mexicans are criminals. It went from 48 to 102, 109, went back up and back up. This guy is a veteran. I'm a Mexican American from El Paso, Texas, and a US veteran. This land is mine. Right? Shouldn't be deported. Anti-Muslim, back with the low numbers, 2020, 21, 103, 185, and 120 and counting. Nationwide, this is a nationwide anti-mosque activity. So since September 11, anti-Muslim sentiment has spiked, although these sentiments manifest themselves. In many ways, attacks on mosques directly take aim at religious freedom. Existing and proposed mosque sites across the country have been targeted for vandalism and other criminal acts. And there have been efforts to block or deny necessary zoning permits for the construction and expansion of other facilities, including here in New Jersey. So the communities, they went to the AUSA and they fought and they won their battle in their hometown to build a mosque because the locals, or they were trying to block building of mosque here in New Jersey. So this color chart, this number is 11 Jersey falls under the 11 or more anti-mosque incidents, along with Florida and stuff. Again, bias incidents, again, the Muslim and Arabic communities remain low. When in doubt, report it to the police. Let them do the investigation. Whatever it is, you should you, that's your right. I mean, it's our duty to investigate and it's your right. No one should be held anything. Call the department, call your county prosecutor. So, 27 line. The number is 1-800-277-BIAS. Anytime you call, one of us will answer. You can go online and file your bias incident report online. And again, no one should become a victim of a bias incident or a crime and remain silent and or fearful. Others are reporting all day, all night. Why shouldn't you? Right? Every police department has a bias officer assigned to the investigations of bias incidents. Every PD has. And then every county prosecutor has a unit. And then the AG's office has units. So back to some earlier example, if you're not happy with your local problem or whatever happened, go to the county, go to the state, go to the AG's office. There's always a higher level. Go to the federal Department of Justice. They have a bias hate crime unit too. There's many layers. So anytime you're not happy with the outcome of the investigation, call us up. We will call the police or the county. Hey, what's going on? Someone came and reported something. What's the follow up? So this is like Tisha said earlier. This is the link to all the stats that the state police posts. And finally, this is the flyers that we brought in English, Arabic. We have Urdu and other languages, but it explains what a bias incident is and what you should do if you're a victim. You call 911 if it's an assault and then what if I'm uncomfortable reporting to my local police? You can call your county prosecutor or the attorney general. If you think that the local cops are not doing much, call us or call the county. There's always another solution to the problem. Do I have to give my name and contact? No, you do not. You can say, I don't want to give my name, but I saw this, or I was a victim of that, etc., etc. Okay? And then the number. Any questions? No.
Just, yeah, we're gonna start the question. We're just gonna start the question. Yes, we all have. Now, I just want to thank you, Sam, first, and I'll go to the questions. Thank you very much, Sam and Tisha. Uh, the way I will do it, continue this thing is we have food in the back and question answers here. And we have easy 30, 40 minutes. I guess they're not leaving till they satisfy your answer. If after 20 minutes you want to go home, go home. Whoever want to stay private to talk to them, they are here. They will answer individual questions also. So let's do it. But try to have the question short so they can answer. Thank you very much. But there's a lot of food in the back. I was expecting 100 people. So I'm expecting now one person should eat at least three people food.
Yes. Yes. It's it's called the dashboard. Yes. No, that's not. You can get yes. You can call yes. Correct. you know, correct, but yes, I'm sorry, he was, it, the bias, 1877 bias, yes. If we don't know about it, we can't investigate what we don't know. Sorry, 1 second. Yes. We can talk, we can follow up offline. Yes. It's case by case basis, pretty much. You know, you can find out from background, checks or from something else that he's biased. So there's ways to prove his bias. Yeah, sorry. That's a possibility. Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in one of the statistics you showed, I saw the wording war next to it. What does that stand?
Conflict. I meant the conflict and
No, after the number, right? Let's say 189.
yes,
In parentheses, I saw first capital A R. What does that stand?
that says that the conflict overseas affected this number. Mhm. Any other questions?